Hello, I'm Sarah Intonato, and I'm broadcasting to you today live from Montauk, New York, which is decidedly more quiet and peaceful than it was in Mysore, India, the last time I came on to Facebook Live. And that said, I miss India terribly, of course, but it's great to be home with my family and teaching my students again. And today we're talking about what it's like to actually transition home from a huge trip of study in Mysore, India. And this is applicable whether you're going to India yourself or even if you're attending any kind of retreat, whether a yoga retreat or a wellness retreat or any kind of life-changing trip. There's always a bit of re-entry that has to happen. And it can be really intense and it can be really intimidating and it can be sometimes make your life feel like it's totally turned upside down. I've done this many, many times and I'm here to help. And today we're going to be looking at some of the most common questions that I'm asked when I transition home from India and what you can do to make your transitions from big trips back into regular life much easier. And I came home from India, my most recent trip, about a week ago, 8 days ago, and it's been so far a pretty good, smooth settling in, and that's not an accident. So to start with, many people ask how I handle jet lag because India is 9.5 hours ahead. So jet lag for me is actually not an issue, and it's not because I'm some kind of bionic human. Going from India to home definitely is a big transition. It can feel a little bit like coming home from Mars and nobody understands you, and a bad case of jet lag can add a lot to that. So I don't get jet lag. And the reason for that is actually a great tip that I received from a student about 10 years ago, maybe longer, who was a flight attendant. And she found out that I was about to travel to India for the first time and took me aside and said, listen, the best cure for a jet lag to prevent it altogether is to fast on an airplane. Now, I'm not a doctor and I can't tell you if fasting is right for you, but I took her advice and never had jet lag again after that. So what I do when I'm going to India or any other place that's a different time zone is I eat a solid meal before I get on the plane. I try to take a night flight so that I sleep a lot on the plane because when you're sleeping, you're not really getting hungry. And I hydrate like crazy. I take a lot of B vitamins, vitamin D, vitamin C, things that help your immune system, that help to keep your electrolytes strong and hydrated. So I feel great when I land. And as soon as I land, I adapt by jumping into whatever time of day it is. So if I land at home at lunchtime, I eat lunch. I just get onto the daily schedule and I try not to go to sleep until it's nighttime local time. So again, fasting on an airplane is not for everyone, but it 110% works for me to prevent jet lag. So if jet lag is a challenge for you, I highly recommend trying it if your doctor says it's okay and if it's something that you feel like you're up for doing. I find it to be indispensable, and again, I haven't had a case of jet lag in over 12 years, but it works for me. See if it works for you. Another question I've been asked this week about transitioning home from India is how long I wait before going back to work once I've arrived home. So I've taken 8 trips to India, and I found that for me, the easiest way to transition home is to give myself a day at home and then jump right back into work. I don't jump into a huge work schedule. My first day back, I teach one lesson and that's it. But for me, reconnecting to my purpose at home really helps me to transition back into daily life. And I feel really centered. And sometimes when I've come home from India, I know once I went to India for 3 months and came home and spent an entire week at home, I felt kind of like I was floundering. I felt a little bit lost before I got back to teaching, and I decided that taking a long break at home was not for me. So for me, it's really helpful to take a day or two, get settled, unpack, and then jump right back in slowly at a pace that feels good for me. And remember, this is what works for me. Everybody is different, but I think if you have a career that gives you a good sense of purpose, if you have work that brings a lot of joy to your life, it can be helpful to start work sooner rather than later at a comfortable pace that works for you. So I didn't teach 5 lessons back my first day. I taught 1 with wonderful students who I love. It felt great to see them. It felt great to get back into the routine. And then I went home and got back to some quiet things at home that were really easy for me to do. So that's what I do to help me get back to work when I get home from India. And it feels like a really nice groove that is smooth and easy. And on that note, for some people, getting back to work is really hard. And people often ask me, what the hardest part of re-entry is after I've had a really big trip to India. And hands down, without a doubt, it is the concept of time in the United States, and it is the pace of the United States, New York in particular. And if you've ever been to India or what is called a high context society, you'll know that other cultures don't have the same concept of time that we do. So if in India, for example, you're going to a shop to buy something and it's first thing in the morning, chances are the shopkeeper's going to open up, maybe do his or her prayers, do some ritual to really set the tone and the energy for the day. And if you're there waiting to buy something, you will continue to wait until the shopkeeper has finished. It's a sign of respect. It's just how local culture is. And in the United States, you know that does not happen. If you're at a store waiting to buy something, when they open, they will immediately attend to you and give you what you want. You know, the customer's always right in the United States. That doesn't happen in other cultures, and certainly in India, there's no rush. So you're gonna just wait until things happen organically. And also, if you're in India and you're trying to catch a bus or a train and the train is due to come at 10:30 and it doesn't come and it's 10:45 and then it's 11 and the train is still not there, if you take a look around, you'll realize very quickly that you, the American, are the only one that is disturbed by this delay. And everyone else, the local people, are just waiting. The train will get there when it gets there, and it's not a big rush. Now, if you're from the United States, you know we don't wait in our culture. Everything is immediate. Everything is instant gratification. So going from a society where there is very little concept of time and controlling of time to the US, it can be really hard. So for me, I have to really take a slow pace when I first get home. As I said before, my first few days, I just teach one lesson, maybe two, then I come home, I cook, I do my practice in the morning to start my day, and I stay home a lot. Especially last week was really cold and rainy many days, so I bundled up, I just did my taxes, which sounds really glamorous, I know, and just stayed close to home. I didn't schedule any extra meetings. I tried not to overschedule my kids. I just wanted to be with my family and take it really slow. Here, if you send an email, you expect it to be answered right away. And in India, that just doesn't happen. So I just try to remove the sense of urgency from my day, and that helps a lot in the transition home. I have to do things at a pace that feels good, and I can't let people rush me. And hopefully this is helpful to you, because every society moves at a different pace, and certainly if you add a big transition with your energy and with your spiritual growth to that process, it can be really hard to come back to a lot of chatter and a lot of chaos in a really fast moving pace. You're trying to integrate a lot of changes that you made, and that can't be rushed. So coming home and taking it at a pace that feels right, and I should note that that pace is different every trip I take, is really crucial for me. So part of that process is then communicating to others what my needs really are. So you might have a process in your head that you know works for you, but if you don't tell the people what you need, it's not going to be very effective. So usually before I come home, I give my family and friends a disclaimer. Hey, I might be taking a few days to unplug and just settle into the house. Don't be surprised if I don't answer your email or your call right away. I might even tell my family, listen, I can't be rushed. This is a big transition, so I might just move at a different pace than you. Please just respect my process. I will be the best that I can be, and usually it's no problem. But if we don't communicate what we need, how are people going to know how to treat us? So whenever you come home from a big experience, whether it's a meditation retreat or anything, you have to tell people what's important to you so that you can then ease into your life and integrate your process in a way that feels natural and healthy to you. Something else that's really crucial for me, and you might have guessed this because I was away studying yoga for a month, is coming home and integrating those yogic tools right away. So I get on my mat right away. If it's a practice day, I get on my mat and practice. If you've ever studied at KPJ AYI, you know that your first week after a big travel experience, you just do primary series. So you're not pushing yourself at the hardest pace, but you're getting on your mat, you're setting the tone, you're cultivating that private space for yourself, and there's no substitute for that. And if you spent a month on a huge retreat for yoga or meditation, then you come home and don't carry over those tools, it's gonna feel like you've gone from Mars back to Earth. You have to make sure that those tools that anchor you, that center you in your day, are still there for you. So make sure that you communicate those needs to your family and friends as well. You might have to tell them, I'm going to be getting up earlier before you're awake. Don't be surprised. I might have to leave the house to do my practice. just do it. You'll feel more centered, and when you're happier and more centered, everyone around you is going to be more comfortable with the transition that you're making. They're going to say, hey, I don't know what she's doing, but it's working for her. She seems happy. Great. So just go with it. Carry over those tools. Don't delay. Make sure that that's part of your transition process. And one of my best tips for transitioning home is give yourself a 2-week buffer to allow yourself to feel really weird. I know this sounds very funny, but sometimes it can be such a huge transition. For some people, it's a culture shock. For me, being in India last week, it was 100 degrees every day, and the nights were so hot and sweaty you could barely sleep. Coming home to spring in New York, where it was raining a few days and cold, and I wasn't sweating at all in my practice, and I felt really chilled to the bone, it can feel really jarring for your system. So give yourself a couple of weeks to assimilate into your new life back at home. Maybe your food situation is different. Maybe your schedule is different. It's okay. Don't make any big life decisions in those first 2 weeks, knowing that you're going to have some highs and lows and you're going to be transitioning. So just let yourself have that disclaimer. That 2-week period is just a safe zone. You're going to do whatever feels good. Let yourself transition home and go from there. And you don't have to worry about how other people react. This is your transition, and let it just be a process. So if you have a retreat coming up, if you even find that this is helpful after having 1 day away, don't hesitate to integrate your tools, communicate to others what you need, give yourself some time and space to let yourself feel a little bit weird. It's a different experience. So thankfully, my family knows that when I come home, I need that 2-week buffer to feel weird and feel like I'm on another planet and feel like New York is just a crazy place. And then after a couple of weeks, I usually feel back like it's home. And I miss India, and I always love to go back, but I'm not longing for it quite so much. So be kind to yourself if you're transitioning from one place to another, and know that I'm always here as a resource. So please don't hesitate to hit me up in the comments below. You can find me at www.sarahyoga.com. And if you're making a big transition this spring, or you just want to take yoga off the mat and make it more applicable to your daily life, please click the link below as well for my 3 quick tips to help you take yoga off the mat into the world to help be more engaged and live your life more fully. Have a great night. Namaste.